Welcome to the Strings Unraveled Book Club for our first meeting.
Yay.
Yay! We announced on our October podcast that we would be trying out a book club, so a virtual book club that you can listen in and join in, or listen to us talk about it and see if you want to read it as well. So we read Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Moraes. It's a wonderful book set in South Africa. It was described to us as a coming-of-age novel.
Mm-hmm. One of our customers recommended it to us.
And I think that was a very good recommendation, but there was so much more.
It was a lot more than that. So I have a quick couple-minute long synopsis I'm going to read. It's just so we can all be on sort of the same page. If you have read it, like me, it's been, I think I probably finished it about a month ago. Or a couple weeks ago, so I needed a little refresher. Mm-hmm. If you're planning on reading the book, I might recommend listening to this after you've read it, maybe not before, because no spoilers, but so this is from a website called bookrags.com, and it says, the novel brings together two unlikely people from different walks of life during the oppressive apartheid regime of 1970 South Africa. These two people are 9-year-old Robin Conrad, a white girl from middle-class family, and 50-year-old Beauty Mbali, a woman from the rural village in the Transkei. The action begins around the time of the 1976 Soweto uprising, whereby thousands of black school children came together to peacefully protest the introduction of Afrikaans as the main teaching language in schools. The police intervene, and many children are seriously injured and killed. Robin's parents, Jolene and Keith, who have been out at a work party, are murdered in the wake of the carnage, while simultaneously Beauty's daughter Nomsa goes missing. Robin and her sister Kat, who is a manifestation of her imagination rather than a real person.
Big spoiler.
Yeah, like I said, listen to this afterwards. They move into their Aunt Edith's apartment and she becomes Robin's guardian. Beauty receives a letter from her brother, who's been housing Nomsa during her schooling, saying that he believes her to be in danger. Beauty travels to Johannesburg in order to find Nomsa and bring her home. She leaves her two sons at home to tend to village chores. After arriving in Soweto, she walks through the streets, which are fraught with devastation, and tries to help and comfort a number of injured children. Judith and Robin have a mildly awkward relationship, as Edith has never had nor wanted children of her own. She's an air hostess who is something of a jet-setter and values her freedom and independence. Having to care for Robin creates an obstacle to this freedom, but the pair struggle along together, trying to make things work. Robin and Edith have an understanding that if they do not speak of Jolene and Keith's deaths, then neither of them have to face their grief and sorrow. Meanwhile, Beauty and her brother, along with some other friends and neighbors, try to piece together what happened and where Nomsa could be. It turns out that Nomsa was one of a group who organized the march, and there is word that she'll be going to Rhodesia to undergo military training with the MK. As Beauty continues her search for Nomsa, she's directed to the home of someone known as the White Angel, a white English woman named Maggie who befriends and helps black people who are in trouble. She helps Beauty in her mission to find Nomsa, where she has many influential contacts. Maggie sets Beauty up with employment as Robin's nanny, so she can stay in the city legally, and so that Edith can continue her job as an air hostess without leaving Robin alone. It takes some time for Robin to warm to Beauty as she's getting over the sting of rejection of her old maid Mabel, who left her during her parents' deaths. The pair soon become very close, however, and Robin tries to use her surveillance and detective skills to help gather information about Nomsa. Robin becomes friends with Maury, a Jewish boy who lives in the apartment block, and a biracial janitor called King George, and together they embark on several missions to aid Beauty in finding Nomsa without her knowledge. One day, Nomsa approaches Robin in a park and asks her to give Beauty a note detailing a meeting, a time, and place. Robin promises to do so, but thinks that if Nomsa and Beauty are reunited, then Beauty will want to go away to be with her daughter and leave Robin all alone. She decides to keep the letter from Beauty, but Beauty finds it by coincidence and has a heart attack from emotional overload. Robin sets off with help of King George and Maury to find Nomsa's friend Fumla, who she says will know Nomsa's whereabouts. They go to an illegal bar and King George distracts Shakes, the man who's controlling Nomsa, while Robin tries to convince her friend that she is trustworthy. She dances with a boy named Asanda in an attempt to prove her efforts to learn about different African cultures. And he tells her where he tells her where Nomsa is. Robin and King George go to find her and tell her the only reason Beauty did not go to meet her was because Robin didn't give her the letter. Nomsa goes with Robin and King George to the hospital, and she sees Beauty and Nomsa are reunited. Robin desperately wants to go into the room to see Beauty, but she knows that in order to rectify her wrongdoings, she must allow Nomsa and Beauty to have this time together, and that it doesn't concern her. Edith arrives at the hospital elated that Robin is safe, and Robin realizes that despite their flaws, Edith really does love her. So that is our synopsis.
Good book. Let's go home.
Yeah. And you don't even need to listen to the audiobook.
No. There is so much she said. Speaking of the audiobook.
Yeah.
Audiobook is super helpful because it really helped put some perspective of the characters. I really could feel the characters a little better myself.
I would have never in my head pronounced things correctly either.
Exactly. I was glad to have the audiobook, number one, because the book is told between the two different perspectives of Robin and Beauty, and it sort of goes back and forth between the chapters, like the narrative of Beauty speaking and then of Robin speaking, and it sort of helped personalize the characters, having different voices and different accents for the two characters, because then you could sort of picture them a little bit easier in your mind and stuff.
And as someone who was actually alive when this was happening, I did not even know that there was a British contingency there. In fact, I didn't even know that Johannesburg was pronounced that way, because I'd only heard it, because during the 70s, it was always Johannesburg. It was always pronounced from the viewpoint of the white Dutch people.
Okay. So the Brits didn't the Brits win the Boer War?
Yeah, but why were they in control? The Dutch were in control.
It's Afrikaners broke off and did their own thing as the only white African natives after a time. The people born there.
Yeah.
But so can I get on my high horse for 2 seconds?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Robin talks about her neighbor, who's an Afrikaners, who hates her family because her dad's, an Englishman who's in charge at the mine, and there's a language barrier there, and
that's true, because the neighbor boy, his English was barely.
Yeah.
He really didn't understand. Yeah.
She talks about how this hatred goes back to the Boer War, which I have to look up the time frame for, which Boer War is where our friend General Kitchener comes from.
I don't call
the
him that
man
anymore.
credited with inventing the way to seamlessly close the toe of a sock.
The misogynist man who took the credit of some.
Okay, so that's
woman.
1902 was the end of the Second Boer War. So that's to 1976. So that's, a whole lifetime.
74 years?
Yeah.
It's several generations deep.
And so, if you don't know, General Kitchener is where the Kitchener stitch gets its name, which is when you graft the end of a toe together or create a row of stockinette between two sets of live stitches. And it was created by a woman who was tasked with eliminating the seam at the end of a toe so that General Kitchener's men no longer would get sores on the end of their toes from the seams in their socks.
I should have known that a man didn't come up with that.
Yeah. So he is also the mastermind behind concentration camps.
What?
And so
Yikes.
let's not call it Kitchener stitch anymore. It is grafting. Graft the toe of your sock together. But someone else, Linda, came up with a great idea. Because I think if it were one of his troops' wives, then there's a chance you could find her name.
Okay.
But it very well could have been a native person.
Yeah.
And then you're never going to find her name.
Yeah.
And so Linda...
I can see that. A native person who maybe was able to get employment by fixing stuff
or who was even just a slave in the camp to the families.
Oh,
like
that's true. Slavery was then.
You know, the way you knit is strongly influenced, like regions around the world is influenced by which European colony came and colonized you.
Mm-hmm.
So Native people were knitting. There had been Europeans there for centuries at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So Linda said, let's call it the camp woman stitch.
I like it.
So I'm open to that. Or just calling it grafting.
Because that's
Let's
all it
forget
is.
that guy's name.
Yeah.
Or not totally forget.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, because
Let's just stop giving him credit for something he most likely never did.
Yeah, let's give him credit for the thing he should be famous for, that I hope that you know where. So,
Wow.
I've been looking forward to sharing that because I was like, oh my gosh, she's talking about the hatred of the Dutch people being interred by General Kitchener that lasted all the way forward, 3/4 of a century and more, because that's the Second Boer War, ended in 1902.
Wow. What a fun
The
fact.
First Boer War was 1880 to 1881. The Second Boer War was longer, 89 to
Don't bore me with dates.
1902. Well, I
See what I did there?
yeah, don't bore me with dates. Dates are delicious.
Okay, we digress.
Bore me.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you had the delay. That is totally something I would do.
Well,
You
I
must
took
be
it to a different
tired.
pun.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay.
I've been looking forward to that. It's so
Thank you for
pertinent
sharing
to
your
my,
context.
to one of my campaigns.
So, what is one of the questions you have for us to think about and answer?
Well, first I just want to talk about, did you like the book?
I loved
Absolutely love the book.
I
Actually,
really enjoyed it.
I loved it so much. I went and listened and read her second book.
I
Yeah.
downloaded it, but I haven't
Which is
listened because
really
I
good.
wanted to
It
keep my
has
brain focused
a
on
recurring
this.
character, but it takes place 14 years later, and it really is a different story.
Yeah, so this was the author's debut novel.
Written as a school project.
I really enjoyed it.
She's amazing.
Very
I
talented.
listened to it in just a couple days. I did take a break at the point where I have this thing where it's like if something bad happens in the story, I'm like, I don't want to, I have to stop.
Aw.
So when Beauty had her heart attack, I sort of stopped listening for a little while. And then
You
it
were
was
so
like,
close to the end.
I know, I didn't realize I was that close to the end.
No,
So like a
she-
week or two later, I decided to like, okay, I should
If
finish it.
that was the end, that would really have been a sucky book. To bring us so close to...
Well, the thing about South Africa is that a lot of real and surreal things exist
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
that just straight suck.
Yeah.
And,
So I could see a story ending that way there.
and some of that comes about in her second book. So
Yeah,
the
it was-
second book is called If You Want to Make God Laugh. Basically, make plans.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Um,
also an excellent book.
I loved the book. I loved what it spurred in my head because as soon as I finished listening and reading along to the book, I had to go listen to Trevor Noah's book, which he, if you don't know who Trevor Noah is, he's the host of The Daily Show on Comedy Central. And he has a memoir called Born a Crime because he was born of a time when it was not okay to be a mixed race child, and it was literally a crime. And he talks about the jail sentences that his black mother and his white father would have faced if anyone
New.
well, it was kind of just people knew, but if you outright acknowledged it, you were going to do jail time.
Wow.
And he goes into a lot of detail about what it's like to, have your father follow behind you or walk across, he had to walk across the street if they ever went anywhere together. So he was born in, I think, 1984. So he was born, just fast forward a little bit to, in his childhood, apartheid ended.
Right.
And so it was...
And he was born in South Africa?
In South Africa, yeah. And he grew up in the area that this book is set. So after getting the groundwork of the novel and then listening to this real person who spent his time in Johannesburg and Soweto and
Soweto, yeah.
different regions around there, and to talk about his identity as how people perceived him white or black, and how he chose to self-identify, and his experience in that mixed up world where he really had no place, and making his way was just so rich to compare against the story told in this book.
One of the things that struck me about the child, whose name what's Robin, is how very lonely her existence was. She's, her parents were basically disinterested. Her father was too busy working. He's the working middle class. And, I know back then parents didn't have close relationships with her, but she went from a lonely childhood where in the beginning you think she has a twin sister. So, but then so she's ignored by her parents, and then she goes to live with her aunt, who is in no way, shape, ever in this lifetime capable of caring for a child, because she's a very self-centered person, in my opinion. I mean, she tries the best she can, but she mourns the loss of her lifestyle more than she mourns the loss of her sister, I think.
I don't know about that.
I think that's probably just one of the ways
just
that
a coping mechanism?
Yeah, coped with it.
But I felt sorry for poor Robin. I mean, she goes from one lonely existence to another lonely existence.
Very sympathetic character, because she's so much. She's so representative of both her ethnicity and of her childhood.
Well, yeah, she's like,
and of her circumstances and of the time she's in, and she's always just trying her most sincere best.
Who was like totally taken, like, did you see it coming that Kat wasn't real?
Well, that's what I wanted to say. So when when Mabel's like, don't tell them where your sister is.
Yeah.
I was like, why is she saying that? I don't understand. I was really worried about the little sister.
About Kat?
Yeah, and
because the police come and take
really,
Robin away.
They don't want it. They don't want her to know that Robin. They don't want them to think that Robin's crazy.
Imagine this: you're a black maid in a household where two people have just been murdered, and they think you might have something to do with it, and they're already abusing you. And a little girl says, go get my sister, she's in mommy and daddy's bed, and that little girl's not there.
Yeah, that would be really bad for Mabel.
Mabel was already having a bad
it's probably not
night.
as bad for Robin as it would have been for Mabel in that situation. Yeah,
when I learned that Kat wasn't real, my mind flashed right back to that, because Mabel did everything that she was supposed to do to care for her, but you know that Mabel had Mabel's interest in...
Exactly, that's why she left. But it wasn't that long between when that happened. She said, don't tell them about your sister, whatever, and then they go to the police station. So that whole time you're really worried about Kat, who's still at home by herself. Yeah. But she's not real.
And then Edith, it was Edith, right?
Yeah.
Your sister's
not real.
Oh.
But then I also felt for poor Mabel, because Mabel really had no duty. Once the parents were gone and the police come, she had no duty to take care of this child. But she still did. She got beat up. She was abused by the police officers. And she still, in some ways, tried to protect that child.
I don't blame Mabel, but honestly, I really see it from a point of view of Mabel was protecting Mabel, because that's what Mabel needed to do.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I don't blame Mabel, but
no.
I don't think she had a chance to make a choice of whether or not she was going to care for the little girl, because when she had the chance, she left Robin. Yeah. Which, again, amen. She has her own life and family to go see what's happening. But at that point,
she also knew Edith was there, right? Or was that before Edith was there?
I think that they knew.
I think
she knew that she had a sister.
Yeah, and also Edith raised holy heck to get Mabel out of.
You're right.
I started to listen to it again, and when you're listening to her talk about her sister, and she's
especially
not
there
real.
Was a part of the beginning that I was a little confused by the first time, where she's talking about her sister and how, like, it's like looking in a mirror or something, but it's like there was some
twins don't describe themselves that way,
which is why I was confused, because it's like she looks like me but she doesn't look like me, and it's like looking in a mirror, but it's like, but then afterwards it was like, I know she's not real.
There were these very
or when they're at the rock quarry and she starts to run off, but she figures her sister can make her way home. I'm like, You're leaving her. I was genuinely worried that the boys were going to find her sister and throw rocks at her.
Yeah.
I just figured that was... I didn't put a lot of stock in that. I was like, well, that's cold, Robin.
Yeah. You're mean to your sister.
But she'd
down.
already been so mean to her. She used her as her own personal whipping boy or whipping girl. And I know that twins don't look at each other that way, because I asked these boys who were very cute Australian twins in elementary school when they were leaving. They did a Q&A with the class, so we could ask them anything we wanted. And it's like, what is it like when you look at your brother and it's like looking in the mirror? And one was like, that's not what it's like.
That's not what it's like.
No.
I have a couple like discussion questions that I figured we could bring up, but one of them is, while we're talking about Kat, what purpose does Kat serve in Robin's life, and what necessitated her appearance? How does Robin use Kat to navigate her home life with her parents and then her life with Edith? Is Kat an effective coping mechanism, and are there any downsides to her presence?
Well, I think it amplified her loneliness, because she didn't challenge herself to find...
she didn't need to find friends because she had her sister.
Or when she was thwarted. Because she certainly sought companionship with the boys
She
or
wanted
the
to be
girls,
friends
and the
with the
girls
boys.
just wouldn't play her games.
The
Right.
surprise to me was that when I realized Kat wasn't real, I thought, oh, an imaginary friend. But she really did have a twin sister who died at birth.
Right.
So that kind of...
how quickly did you know that was the conversation
Not at
she
all.
wasn't supposed to hear?
I was thinking, oh, an imaginary friend. I mean, I had an imaginary friend when I was little because I was in a very lonely circumstance. When you're all by yourself, you make up play, and part of that is making up a friend to play with. But then my middle son, Trevor, he had an imaginary friend, Powdered Toast Man, or no, it's something Toast Man. But mostly that was in case
Sounded so messy.
if he got in trouble, it wasn't his fault. It was the fault of this imaginary friend. And I said, well, since I can't discipline your imaginary friend, you'll have to take what he gets. So maybe you should tell him to straighten up.
Well, that's what
last
Kat
long.
did for her too, right?
Yeah.
She took all her personal imperfections, because it sounds like
She was
her
sort
mom
of like
was
the
hard.
antithesis of Robin.
Yeah, her mom was a hard character, and so
all those emotions that she was not allowed to express.
Robin cried, or Kat was the one that cried. Robin wouldn't cry.
She was able to at least imagine it being expressed through her imaginary friend, her imaginary twin.
That heartbreaking scene in the library
Yes, that's what
with
I'm
Maggie,
thinking.
and she just starts crying and telling her about what's happening, and it was like, oh, I was crying in my car.
I was crying in my car
It was,
too.
yeah. So with
I'm gonna cry right now thinking about it. Like,
she-
of course, your mommy and daddy would want you to cry.
I know. She sort of lets go of Kat for a while, and then she learns, like, oh, I can probably let my feelings out.
Yeah.
And she just spills them all over the library to this woman.
I love that was Maggie. It took me.
Yeah.
I didn't totally get it was Maggie. I think they said her name.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
I didn't get it.
I didn't connect it yet.
Oh, I did.
But of all the
God, Maggie is pure magic.
But of all the people that she could connect with, this total random stranger in a library, and it happens to be the perfect person.
So Maggie is the white angel
Yeah.
that helps Beauty, or is helping Beauty find her daughter, right? When that character was sort of introduced and they were talking about it, I was a little concerned about her character.
That she'd be a white savior character.
And also
Or
it
maybe
felt a
they'll
little
trust her.
like what is it called? Like when it comes in like right at the end to save.
Oh, a MacGuffin.
No.
That's a plot.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
It's like what is it?
It's a
Something
plot
Machina.
tool so that you can.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, that
Anyway,
rings a bell.
it was
What
like
a convenient thing.
what a convenient
Yeah.
thing to happen. And I was also concerned about the sort of like white saviorism aspect of it. But in the end,
But she
doesn't really help her that much because she
Yes.
tells Beauty like stop looking for Nomsa. You know, you need to relax with your search, and I'll help you, but in your own
But
time.
you're kind of risking everybody
And
with your
so,
doggedness.
and Beauty doesn't listen to her. She does it herself, and
But as a mom, I wouldn't listen to her either.
Yeah.
I'd be like,
So that
you
was
have
why
your
I was
agenda,
like-
and my
Exactly.
agenda, my whole reason to be
Yeah.
here, my whole reason if I stop looking for her, then I have no reason to be missing out on time with my 2 sons that are somehow, I don't know who's caring for her sons.
They care for themselves.
Well,
and
they
the
were like
village.
older.
They're
Like
a
he
little
was
bit
like a
older. Oh, okay.
teenager and stuff.
15 or 16.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
but
it's
like,
like she's missing out on that time with her sons. Her whole purpose of being there is to find her daughter. And she's not going to let that go.
And Maggie serves as because the whole time you're waiting for these 2 characters to meet each other because you know they're going to come together. So Maggie serves as the vehicle for them to come together and meet each other. And, you know, Beauty loves and appreciates Maggie, but at the same time she knows what's best and what she's going to do.
And Maggie brings together all kinds of people who have all kinds of
like the social worker woman. I can't remember her name.
Oh, Willie.
Yeah.
Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina.
Okay, which I totally hated until I realized she really is. I didn't trust her until it had to be spelled out to me so much because she was
Robin at that.
Yeah, exactly. You were Robin.
She's going to take her away. And even though as a grown adult, you know that's probably what's best for Robin is to not live with Edith. But at the same time, you don't want that to happen because that's all that she has.
Exactly.
She is the character that's like the mean dog catcher.
Yeah.
You're trying to hide your puppies from so that they won't come and take your puppies.
I think it's Adu ex machina is a plot device whereby an unsolvable conflict or point of tension is suddenly resolved by the unexpected appearance of an impossible character, object, action, ability, or event.
That's what I was thinking.
Which is what a MacGuffin is too, but for
like
movies.
the God in the Machine? Deus ex machina?
Yeah. The God in the Machine, exactly. Poof! Miracles happen.
Yeah. But it didn't happen that way, so I was glad that I was trepidatious about her character. But
so I work in a funeral home, and Maggie gives out St. Christopher medals to everyone who is part of her, under her care or part of her network. And
that necklace symbolizes and tells other people
that you're okay,
that you can trust them,
that you're safe.
And on the back side it says believe. And so I was taking care of someone's belongings, and there was a St. Christopher medal in there. I had to turn it over.
Did it say that?
No.
Oh.
It was a St. Christopher. Which is great too. But I had to still look. And that about the medals thing, Maggie says that she would have given Beauty a gold one, but she knows that gifts of such high value raise more questions.
Yeah.
And that's not the purpose of it. And Beauty's like, I wouldn't take a gold one anyway. Gold is on the blood of my...
It's what killed her husband.
Yeah.
And there's where you see
and I
the
keep
viewpoint
thinking about
of two
that now,
different
too.
cultures.
Also, I'm like, that's not true anymore. I mean... It's still true. Like, all precious metals and gems, I mean... You have to be very careful. It was an interesting, maybe that's not something that I want to partake in.
At the beginning of the book, when she's on her journey to go find her daughter, and she's like in the bus, and she's like taking forever to get there, and like at first, you feel so bad for her because she's like working so hard, but at the same time, she doesn't really complain at all about it. I mean, she tells you how it's frustrating or whatever, but she's
at
used
no
to.
No point does she say this is too hard.
No.
She just
that's not even a question.
She accepts that it's hard, but this is what needs to be done.
Right.
But, and yet she's in her telling, she still elegantly contrasts how easy it is for other people to move around. So she's talking about the journey of the letter, and she's like, this is a however many day walk where it's, and I think when she says the white woman, I think she's talking about the missionary, that it would take her 45 minutes to drive.
Right, to get where she needs to be.
It's just so clearly and elegantly presented that this is it. These are the contrasts. What's another question?
Okay, so let's see. One of them is, hold on. So we can start from the beginning if you want. It says, Robin is a product of her environment and adopts the racist ideology of those around her. How do these prejudices and preconceived notions about black people inform the way she acts? And how does her behavior and thinking change throughout the book, particularly toward Beauty?
That's so transformative through the whole book. Well, that's any child. I mean, race is a social construct. So the people around you teach you.
You get the ideas of the world around you and the explanations for why things are based on the attitudes that your parents have.
But it's not...
Or the other adults in your life.
It's woven throughout the tapestry of, like any country. But this one, because she has it coming from other white groups. So there's the Afrikaners versus the English. And then... all the white people against the black people, and then there are the people with nowhere, which are the mixed race people,
right?
Like King George. I think she becomes. I mean, she just starts taking people at their face value,
right? I mean, and at the beginning, she's not outwardly prejudiced toward anyone. You know, she has her opinion of her maid.
Yeah,
Mabel, who she loves.
Yeah,
she loves.
And she
talks she still thinks of Mabel as someone who is there to help her serve her needs.
Because that's the only thing
because
she's taught.
As a child, that's what she's taught. Yeah.
And then she talks about how, like, when the police come or whatever, Kat's hiding because Kat's afraid of black people.
Oh yeah,
she's not afraid. Like, she's not. I mean, she might be. But she doesn't say she's afraid of black men. But Kat's the one who's afraid of the black men. Yep. So she sort of puts all that on her sensitive sister, who doesn't actually exist.
Nope.
But.
And she's like, okay, so black people killed my parents, and so black people kill white people, and so I should be afraid. And then she comes to acknowledge, oh, well, and then white people kill black people, and not all are good and not all are bad. And
she changes toward Beauty when she learns that she can trust her.
Yeah.
And that she finds her... I think she finds her interesting as a person because Beauty is different than other black people she's probably met because she's more educated. She's probably stronger, I think, than other people that she's met. And
I think, Beauty is such a dynamic character.
She's a very strong, intelligent, gracious woman. And
she knows like what she wants, like in her throughout her entire character, because she doesn't get married and have children early. She gets her education. She goes against everything in her life.
Every kind of little stereotype.
Yeah. Right. Her mother's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Everyone around her's like, what are you doing?
Another question is, Robin and Beauty come together against all odds to create a family of their own. How does this book challenge norms of the conventional nuclear family? How does Beauty's role as the mother of Nomsa differ from her role as Robin's caretaker? What does Hum If You Don't Know the Words tell us about human connection in the face of adversity? So, I think...
that's a huge question.
I know. Wow. So, what is this book... How does this book challenge the norms of a conventional nuclear family? Which is what Robin has at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
With her mom and dad. And then she goes and lives with her aunt, which I guess is, a more non-conventional family. And then... But Beauty comes to live with her, and who's the neighbor guy, the horrible neighbor man that she punches in the gut?
Yeah. Oh, I love her just going after him.
Yeah, like just headbutts him.
I don't remember his name.
Anyway,
he was awful.
He's this terrible racist neighbor who was like very concerned about Beauty's presence.
Beauty's lying on the ground after her heart attack. What's happening in there? Yeah. Can I get the police for her?
So he sort of represents like what most people would probably be concerned with is why is she, because I think they know she's not their maid.
Yeah.
It's a different sort of situation.
Like everything, when you are skirting the system and getting around these horrible oppressive rules,
people are curious
until it's fully out in the open and admitted to. You can't prove it and call somebody on it.
Yeah, that's true.
I do love that the sweet little nerdy boy who what was his name?
Maury.
Yeah, Maury. But his family, they had a lot to lose by keeping the secret, but they kept the secret because they're a Jewish family whose family they know what it's like to escape persecution. And I love that they kept that secret, that
Yes.
they protected them.
Well, it's part of that.
part of-
They helped her.
They're
yeah.
part of her family now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
that non-nuclear family. So I
It takes
wonder,
that. It really takes the idea of it takes a village, because it's almost a village
Well,
within the apartment.
You asked who was caring for the boys. I mean, Beauty's boys kind of self-care, but they live in a traditional village where everyone's going to take care of everyone.
So that's
which she
their
talks
version.
about that too, I think.
So maybe
right?
the idea of a nuclear family differs by nuclear. What is the normative family? So in that where Beauty's boys are, the normative is that the village helps care.
And so we see that that nuclear convention being destroyed, and the thing that works is the village caring for her.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I think it's really interesting that the character chose to have a Jewish family. So that is another minority group that's always ostracized no matter where they are.
Were there Jewish groups in South Africa? I did not know that. If there were,
I mean,
I trust there
apparently
must be
there are.
Jews
Jews are
as well.
everywhere.
That's true. The diaspora.
Yeah, and well, so a really interesting thing that Trevor Noah goes into. So how many people do you think died in the Soweto uprising?
I don't know.
I remember it was a lot.
The story is very the streets are covered in blood. And
I think I
people
read something
suffering.
where it was like they say it was a couple hundred, but then it ended up being, I don't remember what the numbers were.
So the first thing
I
you
thought
get
it was
when
a
you
lot.
Google.
It ended up being a lot higher than originally.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I'm trying to remember, because I was in grade school when all this was happening. So I was only vaguely aware of apartheid, but
Well, when I was in junior high and high school, that's when apartheid was full price.
I was about
age.
Robin's age. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
In the early 70s.
1970. It's 1976.
Okay, I
10
was
years old. You're a little
bit
younger.
older. No,
I thought you were born in, okay.
I was born in 64, so
You're so close
You're very
to her
close
age.
to her.
You're basically...
Doesn't she turn 11 or 12?
yeah.
No,
I thought
she
she turned
turns
11.
10 when her parents die, because she's writing the age she'll be on her next birthday in the hopscotch. Deaths, 176, with some, this is Wikipedia's count, with some estimates ranging to 700. Basically, the South African government never acknowledges how many, or counts how many people died.
Right.
So Trevor Noah has this interesting part. I know we read this book, but it really informed my reading of the next book. That if you ask an African who they'd go back in time to kill, like most Europeans and Westerners are going to say, they're going to go kill Hitler.
Right.
But that's not what an African would say, most likely. They have a whole list of villains that they would go kill first. And it depends on the region.
Yeah.
And so what the Holocaust gives groups who survive that, primarily Jewish people, but there are a lot of oppressed groups who survive that. The Germans kept a count, and so it counts. This is what Trevor Noah said. But in Africa, across all the different regions and countries, no one ever counts.
Right.
And so no one ever knows
How many?
what level of atrocity has been perpetrated, either, by Europeans or by infighting that Europeans have created. It was just hit me to my core, because this uprising that's the centerpiece of, the inciting incident for this book is a prime example of that. These were all children.
Yeah.
They were all school-age children that were shot and battered in the streets.
The military was treating them with guerrilla war tactics, and they weren't treating them like human beings.
It was a peaceful protest. It was
They watched children marching in the street. They weren't throwing
protest curriculum.
Yeah.
I mean, so at the same time I'm listening to this book, the climate change walkout is happening in schools. And here's this thing that these children can do, and here's this other perfectly equivalent thing that these children lost their lives for, or changed the directions of their lives. I mean, Nomsa's life is... how heart-wrenching was it to hear, oh, I married him.
Yeah.
I
when she
can't.
married-
I'm leaving. I'm married to him. I'm his now.
I have
Like,
no choice.
Yeah.
Her course is set. Thank you.
So one aspect of the book that I wanted to talk about was, I wish I could remember this character's name. Edith's friend, so there's this parallel that the author draws between racism and homophobia.
Yes.
So I think use it as, I think the author's using it as a way to help Robin come to terms with different types of people in general.
Yes. Yeah.
So as she becomes more open to, I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name? It was like Steven or something, but that's not it. I can't remember his name. Anyway.
Stefan?
Edith's friend, she learns to love him and he becomes part of her family and someone that she trusts. And then I think that opens her up to other experiences and other types of people as well.
That's true, because she grew to care for him like an uncle, like an uncle that comes in.
And it was like she met him before she knew that he was a gay man. Yep. She's young, so she doesn't realize what that means or whatever. Mm-mm. She just loves him because he's nice to her and he takes care of her and he brings her presents and, he's a fun guy to be around. And when she learns that he is a gay man, she's like, she could care less. Like, she's like, what does it matter who, it doesn't matter to me who you are or who you love or whatever. So she's open to, like, once I think she learns, like, it doesn't matter to me, like, I could care less.
She got to know him as a person, so she
Right.
didn't have any judgment.
So she doesn't, and she wasn't exposed to that really as a child, so she doesn't have any prejudice against gay people. Well, not that the story tells us. So she doesn't have any prejudice against gay people starting out, so she's like, why does it matter? Why are these people being mean to you?
She seemed completely unaware that such a thing existed.
But when she's growing up learning about black people versus white people, she has a prejudice against them already. Yeah. So I think the author's using it as a way to like show like that she is an open mind. I mean, she's a child. She's open-minded. Mm-hmm. Did you figure out his name?
I'm looking for it still.
It was like, was it Johan?
No.
It was something like that. Anyway.
Johan, I think it was one of the neighbor kids.
It could be.
Well, and there was this partner that, yeah.
I know, she has such a hard time because, like, right when Beauty is... I think it's right before Beauty goes to the hospital. Her friend goes to the hospital because he's beaten by a group of people for being a gay man. Yeah. And so she's worried about him, and then in like the next beat, then
I was totally crying when she was at his bed.
And she was
just trying to comfort him.
Oh, I know, and they're holding hands.
Her
oh my
sweet
God.
little heart.
Yeah.
Trying to say, she didn't understand why this is happening, but she didn't care. She just wants him to get better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. What else can we talk about? How far are we? Yeah. So let's try and wrap it up a little bit. So, the last question I have here is, what do you make of the ending? And why do you think the author chose to conclude the novel at the point that it did? And then if there were an epilogue, where do you think we'd find the characters later?
I think I would never want an epilogue.
No?
Yeah,
I don't like epilogues in general.
I find them satisfying at times.
I like to sort of think about what, I like to sort of make conclusions for myself. Yeah. And I feel like if there's an epilogue, it's sort of like, well, you're wrong, but this is, you know what I mean? Yeah. I guess some things are up to interpretation.
Me, an epilogue belongs at the end of a series, or maybe at the end of a book that may not have a sequel, but they need to wrap up some of the unanswered questions.
Like I like the epilogue of the oh wow.
The thing you were thinking of.
She shoots arrows and goes against the Capitol.
Hunger Games.
Thank you. I like that epilogue. I know some people find the content a little disturbing. Like, they wish that, it didn't turn out that way for her. But I like that epilogue, and I like its placement. Like, that's done. That story is done.
Right.
Dun, 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 dun. But, I mean, everything that's ahead of each of our heroine is so tangled. I mean, Robin is still charting unknown waters with her aunt, and right around the corner is, you know, the teens. So, I mean, we know she turns out all right because it feels like she's an adult a little bit.
I was a little confused by the narrative because it sounds like, you know, the way she's talking is like she's a child, but she has enough, you know, knowledge and reflection that you can tell she's an adult when she's telling you the story. So I was a little confused by, like,
at least
where we're supposed to be.
Early 20s, because she talks about, like, oh, when I took psychology, I learned how fractured I had become.
The one part of the book that I had a hard time really...
You can't tie a bow around what's ahead of those two characters.
True.
And I probably wouldn't want to.
Mm-hmm. The one part of the book that I had a tough time following or buying is that she's willing to go into this all black gin joint, and because she didn't really seem that bold. It's hard to see that she was super bold enough to.
I mean, by the end there was a lot riding on. At first she was scared because she went twice, right?
Yeah.
And at first she was scared, but by the end she was like, I have to help Beauty.
That's
and I'm
true.
not... Well, in her mind, she's the only one that can do it. So I don't think she felt like she had much of a choice.
Maybe she felt like it was her fault that this happened and nobody else could do it because no one else knows.
I mean, it was her fault that it happened.
It was. Also, she doesn't trust many of the adults in her life either.
I don't blame her, though.
She trusts Beauty and Maury, and that's about... And maybe Maggie, because Maggie made magic. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, Maggie is almost a cardboard character. Like,
yeah, she doesn't do a whole lot except for bring some people together.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of places where you think, how fortuitous is that when Beauty is... she takes, like, a car out to... Remember she
and Willie get in the truck to go see if they can find the friend who's working at the bar.
She just happens to stop at the right house and break in, and she's very lucky at Mag's house, where I think is Maggie. No, not.
Oh, but she was heading there though.
She was heading there. But she didn't know for sure which house it was.
There was a dramatic tension there of like. Oh, how convenient! You're right in front of the right house.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna lie.
Just the right person came out to help me.
They just happened to cover for me.
But I mean, it's plausible.
Yeah,
because
that's where she was going.
Almost there. You know, she'd been taking all day to find it,
and they probably were looking for her. I would think, but they didn't they just like pull up?
But I agree with you.
Right
it was like, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of lucky.
Well, I think
good timing.
I feel the caretaker who came out first, that he might have been able to carry it off because he could prove he was in the right place.
Right. Because she doesn't have the documentation that she needs.
Yeah.
It did make me wonder if places... It's kind of like a underground railroad of sorts, bringing some people to safety out of apartheid.
Yeah, that's what she was doing.
But I felt like... But I wanted to know, did that really happen? Were there white people
I think there were.
that had that set up?
So Trevor Noah's book is a perfect companion to this book. Okay. Because he talks about like how his mom, first of all, she didn't want to be she didn't want the choices that were in front of her. I can't right now directly say what they were. And at that moment there happened to be a training program to train for office work, so which he makes some great analogy about how unlikely it was that a black woman was really going to get hired in an office, but she makes it happen, and she wants to live in Johannesburg, so she learns from the women who are able to live in Johannesburg, which are all sex workers, and she doesn't want to do that though. She wants to work in an office. How to live in the city, and then Trevor Noah talks to his mom later and says, "Why did you live this way, and why did we live this way? Because I went out into the world and left South Africa, and I met all of these mixed race people who didn't grow up there. Well, they would have had to leave." And this was their country, and she's from South Africa. Why would she leave? This is her place.
That was her home.
But yeah, there's like and one parent usually left. Both parents didn't get to leave usually. But yes, there was a network of getting people out.
That's awesome.
All right, then. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. Thank you, Xenia, who recommended it, because I was going to read it anyway. So I'm glad that we got to talk about it.
I loved this book, and I don't know I would have chosen it on my own.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole book, I kept trying to figure out where the title came from, and they did bring it in closer to the end.
No, Edith says it
at the funeral.
Yeah, like in the middle of the book at her sister's funeral.
I think this title, like the next book, is clear if you want to make God laugh. But I think "Hum If You Don't Know the Words" refers to like what we all do through life, which
Fake
is
it till you make it.
Exactly. Just keep
going. Yeah.
It sounds like you're supposed to be here, or you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, even if you're the 11-year-old little girl in a completely
fight that imposter system,
black
and keep on going.
Yeah, that's one of these questions. Is
like,
what's the significance of the book's title, and why do you think it was chosen, and how does it relate to the book's central themes?
Well, if I was writing my first book, I'd definitely call it that. But I mean, it sets you up for everybody's
just doing their best.
They're pretending to be here the way they're supposed to be here.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we were talking about that scene where she's pretending to be a maid going to the house where she's going to work, and she's like doing her best to convince these people, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have the proper papers. Please believe me so I can keep moving,
I'm sure my papers are right in there. If you just let me go in, I will go get them.
Yeah, it's such
at least if I could just get out away from these people.
I want to say one more thing too, because like I'm interested in learning more perspectives about South Africa, and I think it's an interesting social experiment of how do you heal this like deeply divided by design country, which we look at in our own country right now. I don't think it's as by design, like it was intentional to create the circumstances in South Africa of this time.
I do think our system is maintained by design, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you get your country out of that and do it so well? Well, again, listening to Trevor Noah, it's interesting. He spent his first 3 decades living there. In the time of transition, maybe it's not so, magically done. I want to either read James Michener's book called The Covenant, which is 15,000 years and 58 hours.
You told me that.
I'll just rely on your clip
I'll
notes.
give you a brief synopsis.
And that'll be all I need.
Or listen to Nelson Mandela's A Long Walk to Freedom. But Nelson Mandela, I love that this book gave us this perspective on this time. He's one man who did amazing things, and was an amazing human being. But everybody looks to his story. I love that this gave us
someone else's story.
These stories, especially from a woman's point of view. That was right in the beginning. Beauty says something that just has been bouncing in my brain. You never have to tell a black woman where she belongs. I was like, whoa.
So
that sort of set a tone for exactly what she was going to be going through.
With that in mind, you really, really need to listen to and read the second book, because more of that, what it's like to be a woman in South Africa, even 15 years later. I mean, when you think of that in the second book, they're getting to vote. The blacks are getting to vote for the very first time in history in their country, and when you think about that, when I was trying to talk to my youngest son about this, because we always love historical things to talk about, and he goes, wait a minute, it's Africa, but the white people are in charge? I don't get that. I just don't understand that.
South Africa is a confusing country.
It is, yeah.
The first time I was like, you're from South Africa? When I met Afrikaners.
He goes, what do you mean that a country called South Africa? Isn't South Africa just the direction?
Just the part of Africa?
The part of Africa? No, there is a country called South Africa. So, So anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to hear any perspectives that you might have. So, we think we're going to try and make this a monthly book club. Mm-hmm. So maybe if we get any emails or any insights that we would like to discuss, maybe we'll start off with that in the next episode and sort of do a little wrap up. If you guys have anything you want to say, any perspectives that you have, whatever, please email us. You can send emails to stringsandthingsinfo@gmail.com or leave a comment on wherever you're listening to this.
Maybe on the subject line, put book club so it stands out.
Yeah. So the next book that we have chosen, we all put titles in a hat and picked one out, is Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. It was a movie recently with I started this sentence. I didn't remember where I was going.
I love her. Kate Blanchett.
Kate Blanchett. Anyway, I just saw the movie. Well, I didn't just see the movie. It was a couple months ago. Is the movie by the same name? Yes.
Okay.
So I saw the movie, and I thought, I'd really like to read that book because it's a pretty popular book. So that's what we're going to read. I don't know exactly when that next episode will be up, but
before Christmas.
Mid-December before Christmas. So
I want to give you about a month to catch up with.
Right.
This.
So our normal episodes of Strings Unraveled come out the first Monday of every month. So if you listen to that, I'll start off the episode by telling you the actual date, and then you could just pay attention to our Instagram or if you're signed up for our newsletter emails, you'll know when it's going to come out. Or just look for it, mid-December.
I love this book.
Yeah, I loved it too. And I'm glad that we're doing this. I thought it was fun.
I really enjoyed it too.
I am trying to read more books this year because I was like, I don't know how many books I read last year. Like, I'll give myself a challenge. 10 books. I don't know. We'll see. And then I hit that like in June. And I was like, I guess I read more than I thought I did. So this is going to help me keep up my...
Yeah. I read less than 10 books but I listen to a lot of books.
Well, that counts.
A lot of books.
I count those.
Okay. Then I'm doing all right.
Yeah, then you're doing great. All right, guys. We'll talk to you in a month about the next book. Okay.
All right. See ya.
Bye.
Good night.